Good evening, everyone. This is Ron. It's a little after six on Monday afternoon, Monday evening, excuse me, and we're ready to begin. And as always, questions. I thought a very good session yesterday. Uh, the funny thing is, I never remember detailed. I can't sit here and tell you detailed things that we talked about, but I still feel
Hello.
good about the session. Hello. Hello.
Say hello, everyone. Are you already started?
Okay. Yes, sir. We just started. Just started. So, just starting off with just saying, we seeing if we have any questions and comments. I hope everybody had a good day. Anyone have a question or comment or want to get us started tonight? Okay. Monday night used to be full of questions. I guess we any anymore. But that's okay. They'll come back, I'm sure. Uh, uh, I was looking at something, guys, and I talked about it for a bit the other night. I was looking at Matthew chapter 3, specifically verses 13 through 17, and I read them for you the other day. Uh, and I'm trying to understand baptism. This kind of started with me trying to compare this to the lesson we did with "Let Your Light So Shine." He who lights a lamp does not put it on the bushel. So my understanding of that lamp and lighting that light really just kind of excited me, and I still feel that. I think sort of uncovered something in me and revealed something. So uh, I was kind of relating that to this when I set my mind to kind of trying to understand a mikvah and just kind of fell down in this hole and been chasing it ever since. But I'm going to read these verses and then maybe ask some questions and maybe we could dig a little bit and kind of understand this and go from here, okay? Starting at verse 13. I'm going to read 13 through 17. Then Jesus arrived from Galilee at the Jordan, coming to John to be baptized by him. And John tried to prevent him, saying, I have need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? But Jesus answered, said to him, at this time, for in this way it is fitting for us to fulfill right. Then he permitted him. And after being baptized, Jesus up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened. He saw descending as a dove coming upon him. And behold, a voice, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Uh, we're quite familiar with that. The thing that kind of got with me is looking at mikvah. Mikvah is the Jewish word, excuse me, the Hebrew word for that means to, the word actually means to gather waters, to a collection or a gathering of the water. And this purpose of these waters is for the cleansing or the purification of one seeking to be purified. Uh, this was a practice that started in the Old Testament. We'll get to in a minute. So when you look at this, the history of it a little bit, the first was supposed to be in running water. It's supposed to be in what was referred to as living waters. The waters were moving, running, and in that way, it was ensured that they were clean. It was clean water. You were supposed to be able to see, look in it and see the clearness of it. Uh, that was part of it. And then the as time went on, they moved to having, as we do today, pools and different types of baths used for this same purpose. But here, this part of this that intrigued me was this being done in the Jordan. The Jordan was not considered a clean or a pure river, but the history of it runs through the Hebrews from the very beginning, the history of the Jordan. But I read something a rabbi said. He said that a mikvah is where is it here? A mikvah is a type of giving. It is once you understand it, once you go through this purification, if you whatever you set out to do, let's say I set my heart on giving out shoes or making shoes, then I will be sort of blessed or immersed in that area. So if you giving out love and kindness, you become immersed in that. And this is the part that reminded me of the light. You become the balance of it. Meaning, let's say if you give out, if you can measure this, but if you give out 5 rays of sunlight, 5 rays of sunlight come back to you. You are always in equal measure as long as you're giving. So that kind of intrigued me and wanted me to take a closer look at this. But I want to stop right here and see if there are any questions or comments. Okay.
Ron.
Yes.
Ron,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Give out 5 rays of sunlight.
Huh?
When you say you give out 5 rays of sunlight.
I was just talking about the balance of it. I was trying to think of a good example. Let's say you gave out 5 glasses of water. You receive 5 glasses of water in return. Is what I was saying. So whatever it is you immerse yourself in, like for example, we have set out to immerse ourselves in forgiveness and love and kindness. So the more of that you give out, the more of it comes back to you. That's all I was trying to say. I gave a poor example. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I gave a poor example. And I liken that to, the lesson we did when we were looking at Luke. The more of that light that you give, you don't put it on the bushel basket. The more of it that you give, the more of it that you receive. So that seems to be the spiritual pattern here and I think are well on our way to practicing that. It is set. If you are setting out to be righteous, your objective or your job in this is to be a giver, to be someone who constantly gives and receives. Pastor, you trying to say something?
Huh?
Or somebody?
Speak to that. Yeah, the giving, when Kathy asked that question about the 5 rays of sun, right? The bottom line, I think, is that, not I think, I know, is that you live by giving. You receive by giving, but you don't give just to receive. If you give just to receive, then you're not giving, you are lending. If you give because it's the righteous thing to do, then you are giving to receive so that you will have something else to give. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like tithe and offering. The reason people are taught to tithe is because they go get a blessing. That's wrong. You do it because it's the right thing to do. But if you do it because you are expecting a blessing in return, then you're trying to buy something, or you're trying to receive a dividend on what you invested. Does that make sense?
It does.
Anyone, especially in this regard, because all our lives, that's what we've heard. Render the tithe, and you'll receive a blessing, or you'll receive a reward, or you render that tithe, and this is the worst part of it. If you are behind on a bill, render that tithe, and the money will come back to you, and then you end up borrowing it from somebody.
Yeah.
You live by giving, so you receive to give. Bottom line. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. To further go along what Pastor just said, that's part of the mikvah, is that you are supposed to have an intent. So the intent is not to join the church. The intent has to be something personal, has to be something that it was supposed to be anyway, that deals with people, deals with others. It has to do with sharing. So that's kind of part of this. There are several things I want to mention. I want to draw your attention to something. I read verses 13 through 17, but not almost. You need to go back to the beginning of this chapter to really kind of understand this. Look at verse 11. This is John the Baptist talking, and he's talking to the Pharisees who came with bad intentions. That their hearts, again, I talk about your intentions. Their intentions were not pure. And he says to them, as for me, I baptize you with water for repentance, but he who is coming after me and mightier than I am, not fit to remove his sandals, he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. Pastor, you want to speak to that for a minute? Because we are, and we've talked about this before, but just to help us to gain a perspective of baptism and what a mikvah is, and the fact that this is purely spiritual, and the difference between the water and the spirit.
John, first of all, it's a misnomer to call him John the Baptist. He's actually John the Immerser. And the reason he was called an immerser is because he was performing mikvah. Excuse me. He was performing mikvah, and that's why he was called John the Immerser. As far as the baptism with water is concerned, did you deal with the? I had to step out a minute, but did you deal with that the Jordan River is dirty?
I mentioned it. I want to get back to it, come back to it, because I want to talk about all the different types of mikvahs that took place before this, and how we get here. Yeah, okay. But go ahead if you want it included in your explanation, please.
I do believe that every bit of it is symbolic, because if this was a true mikvah, the water could not be dirty. It has to flow, but it can't be dirty. Can't be murky. This speaks to what's in us. A cleansing is necessary in order for us to come to a realization of who we really are. Why do I go back to that? The reason is because the mikvah I understand, Nick, the way I have done it is that you dip 7 times, and then the person who you are cleansing with mikvah dip 3 times on their own, and they hold their breath as long as they can each time that they dip those 3 times, and that is a reminder of your Creator. It is a reminder that there is no life without the Spirit, your breath. The other 7 speak to the cleansing of the man so that he can have a new beginning. It's the cleansing of the person. And the reason that is no longer necessary is because John said, there one is coming whose shoes are not worthy to unlatch. I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. So, if Jesus was coming to baptize with the Holy Spirit, and John was saying, I baptize you with water, but one greater than me is coming to baptize you with the Holy Spirit, then the baptism is spiritual as opposed to being in water. And it is a spiritual mikvah as opposed to being a physical mikvah. And there are those who prefer to be physically baptized in water. Have no problem with that. And the reason I don't is because there are those who have to use oil to anoint before they believe that the power to heal someone is within them. And the water baptism is necessary only until we get people to understand what the Scripture said, that water baptism ended when Jesus was baptized, because he came to baptize with the Spirit. Now, there's a whole denominational argument that surrounds this idea of baptism as opposed to understanding the immersion of a mikvah. And that challenge is between the Methodist way of doing it, Baptist way of doing it, the Catholic way of doing it. It has nothing to do with the scriptures that Ron is talking about now, but has everything to do with to draw a line of demarcation between beliefs, thus separating people from each other, family from family, etc. When we do it the way that John said it, then we are baptized with the Spirit by Jesus. What does that mean? Do you want me to go there, Ron?
Yes, that's fine.
What does that mean? Jesus is not waiting on you to speak in tongues before you are immersed in the Spirit. The immersion that Jesus gives is an immersion in understanding the principles that he came to clarify, not to establish, not to destroy, but to clarify, to fulfill. And when you are immersed in those principles, that is a spiritual mikvah. Those who have looked at the Christianity and seen that it's manipulative, it is entertaining, it is not scripturally based, it is based upon the philosophies of the Europeans. And when you look at that and see what it's actually saying, what you see is when we've begun to see that religion is not the thing, denominations are not the thing that was intended by the Scriptures, now our mikvah has begun. And every time that we are able to see further than what we have seen in the past in regards to the rituals of religions, that is our cleansing ourselves. And the 7 speaks to get into a place where you are totally dependent on your Creator, because you know that you cannot live without the Creator, meaning that the spiritual, last 3 are spiritual, because you're reminded that you are spirit, and without that spirit you can't live in this body. And the 3 times that you do it speaks to spiritual completion. So it is a spiritual completion because it is the Creator, it is you, being the spirit, and it is your body. So it takes you recognizing that you are one with the spirit and that your body cannot exist without the spirit. Therefore, it must be here for the purpose of carrying the spirit and the principles that Jesus taught, and that they are the same principles that you will find in the Old Testament, but the principles had been rendered ineffective by the writings of the priests, the scribes, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees. Now we are at a place where our desire is for the principles to be written on our hearts, meaning that we recognize that the principles that Jesus taught, the principles that we are immersed in, are the principles of righteousness, forgiveness, loving kindness, etc. When we get to that point, then we begin to function spiritually. Even though we don't totally sometimes accept that or embrace that, if you think back to where you were before we embrace the reality that we are Elohim and that we are the same consciousness as is the universe, and as our desires grow, our consciousness expands as well. That's where we began to be functional in the 8th sense, meaning that our functionality goes far beyond the physical realm. I'm done.
Any questions, y'all? Questions or comments?
Yeah. Good evening, Ron. I wanted to just respond to, what Pastor mentioned in terms of the baptism or the scripture in the Old Testament. And if I am correct, I believe, Pastor Richard, that we had some conversation in the past in reference to Naaman was being asked by the prophet Elisha to go to the Jordan and to dip 7 times. And then the last 3 times, we talked about the importance of holding your breath. But was this the first recorded baptism, in the Old Testament, and that the number 7 talked about the cleansing of spiritual darkness and the completion, of the earthly world? But the number 3, in terms of holding your breath, was the completion of the spiritual world, and the 10 represents the law and principles. But I just wanted to, bring that up because I know that was something that, was a question sometime in the past in terms of when was the first recorded baptism that occurred in the Old Testament, and would that be the scripture to go to pass in terms of 2 Kings chapter 5 verses 10? That's my question. Pastor, does that relate to what Ron is speaking in reference to baptism?
Oh, you know what 1 Kings say?
Yeah, George, I read those too, and I was going to go back there, use them as reference as well. But you're right. It's 2 King, and I read chapters 5 and 6 that kind of explain that. But yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that it was on my heart to say something, and I just wanted to make sure that you speak when I say something. Thank you. I'm done.
No, thank you.
What does it say? Is it about Naaman?
Yeah,
Yeah,
about
Naaman,
Naaman,
yeah.
Okay,
The sword of Naaman.
Okay, when we were talking, I would venture to say it was earlier than that.
I think so too. Let me. I wanted to. I was going to touch on it a little bit, but there's so much in there, George. I wasn't going to go into too much detail because a lot of symbolism and stuff I don't quite see yet with Naaman. But that was certainly a type of immersion. That was a mikvah that he took there, and it kind of explains the name of the Jordan, what it means, because Naaman was extremely prideful, and the name means to go down or to descend. The river is talking about a descender. And the funny thing that helps us, to me, is to look at not only the names of the people, but some of the names in the scriptures, like when it talks about I see these now more as verbs because they mean something. They talk about an action, so part of this, the explanation here with the Jordan, and I want to get into that a little bit. The Jordan was the scriptures is full of verses talking about the Jordan. Again, it means to descend or to go down, but it was a place of boundaries. It marked boundaries for them. There were several cities and regions and territories around there, and different type of cultures in each of those places. It marked a memorial as of their relationship with the Creator. That was something that was extremely important. So it had a spiritual or connection to them. I see the Jordan River, as I do a lot of things in the Old Testament specifically, but here in the New Testament, I see it as pointing back to creation. I see it as something that shows us that we can go back to beginning whenever is necessary. So, and the reason why I say that, this by the name of it meaning descendant, to descend, and the fact that it points to the history of God. If you can see it as a metaphor, it's all spiritual. So it too had four tributaries, if I'm pronouncing that right, that merged together to form the Jordan. So four waterheads came together to form this. So when you look at this, I see more than just a murky river. I think the murkiness of it marks the history of it, and it is no coincidence that Jesus is baptized in the dirt and the filth that religion has provided, that man has gone through, the history of man with God. All of that is contained in the Jordan. So the dirtiness of it is a spiritual thing that marks history. At least that's what I'm seeing here. Mikvahs. Mikvahs have happened since the beginning of time. Verse 9 in Genesis 1 says, "Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so." This is a type of mikvah. This, to me, is the very first mikvah. The episode that we studied a couple of weeks ago with Noah was another type of mikvah that the earth took place in. So all of these are opportunities to return to beginning, opportunities for us to pause, to take a step and stop and take a look at what's going on. Again, when we had the pandemic, one of the things that was noticeable by scientists was the cleansing of the oceans. the oceans cleanse themselves, and the replenishing of the animals, and the stars in the atmosphere, everything became clean. And again, all of this has a practical side, right? There was no fishing, there was no dumping, there were no pollutions as far as factories, 100 million factories running. So you look at it from that practical perspective, but in the spiritual side, we don't want to miss that. And so all of these things are to point back to opportunities for us to come back to beginning. So when we look at this Jordan, what personal thing does this connect to us? It connects in the point because it shows us to the history that we have all journeyed through. We have opportunities daily to return to beginning. We have opportunities to look at this and have the intent. As we have set our intent on righteousness, on love and kindness, and the things that Pastor mentioned, and we have become immersed in that. So we have moved to the place where that free will that was so guarded, that was so treasured, that religion pointed to us, we relinquished it, or we have used it to point to we are more than just religious being. We're more than what religious has to offer. And that's what the Jordan gives us. It gives us that history. So the thing about Naaman, as George mentioned, Naaman was very proudful. And one of the things Naaman said is, I can think of a couple of rivers. I can't remember the river's name, but I can think of a couple of rivers that are cleaner than the Jordan. Why is he sending me to the Jordan? So Naaman was getting ready to walk away, and one of his men come to him and say, "Hey, look, if he had asked you to do something that a mighty soldier would do, would you have done it?" So, Naaman was upset that he didn't come out there and call in the name of God and wave his hands or whatever, but he did not want to go get in this muddy water. But he ends up doing it, and he in other words, he ends up what's the word I'm looking for? An act of submission. He ends up giving up his pride. He ends up lowering himself. I am Naaman. I am the captain of the king's army. I have just come back from war. I've done this. I've done that. But he ends up cleansing himself of leprosy. So which talks about he becomes in rhythm with the God of Israel. So that is what the Jordan represents. It represents a history of not only who they are in this book, but who we are. You got to see it spiritually. So the Jordan is a reminder of us, of the journey that we took, and we represent all of mankind who are searching for truth. And one of my sources, who I didn't write it down, but it pointed to that the Jordan had energy that would give energy when you were baptized there, or when you crossed there, that it would energize you, a special spiritual energy. I put quotation marks around that because I found nothing else to support it. But I just want to point that out to you to tell you how important and how special this is. So when we look at this, put yourself here. Put yourself in the history of this. This is just a reminder, and put that part of it, all of that, into what Pastor said about the water and where you are now. It talks about your history and the journey that you've taken, or we've taken, to get here. And the journey that we're on now, we're carrying mankind. So this is very important. This is important to be able to see ourselves here.
I have a question. Is tears when we cry, is that a form of mikvah? Tears?
I had not thought about that, Evelyn. I suppose it could be. It could be a form of cleansing. Yes. But can somebody help me with that? Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's a form of cleansing because you remember the lady was washing Jesus' feet. She was crying and the moisture from her eyes and stuff. She was wiping Jesus' feet, and they were telling Jesus that he didn't move her away. Jesus said, "No, she anointed me." You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tears, excuse me, tears are also tied to your emotions. What most people don't realize it, but all your emotion, depending on what emotion you're expressing, your tears come out different ducts. And I used to know all three of them. If you are hurt, the tear ducts are usually center. If you're happy, I think it's on the right of your eye. And the third one, I can't remember, I know it is in the next to your nose. So the tears don't always come out the same duct, but they are indicative of what you're experiencing emotionally, which makes them an emotional mikvah. Make sense?
Ms. Evelyn?
Oh, yeah. That thought just came to me when you were talking about mikvah, and yeah. So it is okay. I like that. Thank you.
And Ron.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about the murkiness of the Jordan, right? That it's not just speaking to muddy water.
Okay.
It's speaking to far more than that. It's talking about the filth of humanity.
Yes.
Because in the Jordan River flows sewage from upriver, from the banks, and also in that Jordan River flows agricultural runoff, carcasses of animals that have been found dead and thrown in the river. Everything's in that river. So It is truly a metaphor that speaks to the depths of the cleansing that we must engage in order for us to, as Naaman had to do, rid himself of that pride, that boastfulness, that I have to be in this dirty river. I'm bigger than that. I'm more important than that kind of thing.
Yes.
So I just wanted to add that, so you've been thinking about it's just dirty water, like from dirt or soil, right? It's everything. Yeah. Thank you.
Ron, I got one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that why we having all these floods? I know mankind is the reason why we having the floods, but is the earth having a mikvah? Is that the same thing too?
I think that has, please someone else speak to that. Evelyn, I think that has to do with the fires and the floods. I think is the earth crying to try to cleanse itself. And the earth is trying to purify itself. All these fires. And as I found out this week, I mentioned to you guys, might have been Saturday, the different fires. You got fires burning all over the world. I did not know that in the deserts or they didn't call them deserts, but in the territories, even in China, they have uncontrollable fires going, and in Africa. So all of this is not a coincidence. You're seeing floods and fires all over the world, and that is speaking to us.
And it's flooding in the desert on the West Coast. When you talk about people in Las Vegas having to find shelter from torrential rains and the waters flowing down the streets like rivers. That's something totally, totally unexpected, unheard of. However, I believe that Ron's response to your question is absolutely right. However, I believe that it is a mikvah it's a material mikvah. Man is trying to force God to be what he wanted to be, and the response to that is materially. That material response is that the earth is responding, trying to purify itself in a material way. That coincides with what John was doing with the baptism, the mikvah. When John said that Jesus would baptize with the Holy Spirit, have a spiritual baptism, meaning a spiritual immersion, our responsibility is to be that spiritual immersion. And when that spiritual immersion is taking place, there is no need to be baptized in the filth of Jordan. And there is no need for the earth to try to repair itself, to purify itself in a material way, because just like it was the spiritual essence of our Creator that set everything where it was supposed to be in terms of the mikvah of the earth, when the Creator dealt with it, it put everything in order. And it did not get out of order at this stage until there were spiritual attempts or those who were traveling a spiritual journey to change the heart and minds of humanity so that they could become humans. So I do also believe that the journey that we are on, immersing this world, this earth, in the spiritual essence of our existence, that in itself will begin to cleanse the earth without having fires and floods that are out of control. I do believe it's necessary for the fires and the rivers to be out, the water to be out of control, and I believe it's necessary because it's going to force humanity to respect the climate. No one cared about flooding as long as it was in New Orleans. But when the flooding took place in Kentucky the way it did, all of a sudden there's an interest there. When the floods washed away buildings in Nevada, everybody was interested in. So what's happening is the material desires of the material desires of those who are in governmental/business positions will not respect the earth until it robs them of all their money, until it causes them to lose money, to spend money. And the religion won't respect it because religion is waiting to have a prayer meeting and change everything and disregard totally that we are supposed to be the regulators of this earth. And that comes because we are following, regardless of your denomination, whether it is an affiliation with Islam, whether it's an affiliation with Hinduism, all of them have been poisoned by the mindset of Europeans. And every religion is now under the influence of the European, meaning that everything that's not Christianity is pagan. And we cannot deny the reality that the Catholic Church influenced Islam greatly after the death of Muhammad. So between the church and the government/business, then what we are experiencing is an attempt to do things to cleanse itself, just like men are doing things that pleases them, that makes them. They want to make things happen so that they can get wealthier. And the earth is rebelling against that in a physical way. And that's necessary so that they will see your money can't save you from this. It's necessary for this journey we are on so that we can bring balance in that. Balance does not mean that only men will be balanced. Balance also means that the earth will be balanced. And the earth will not be balanced until men are balanced. And men, Caucasians especially, don't seek anything different until they lose everything they got. And when we look at how the universe influences what's going on, we will begin to see that the earth is responding to the power that's in charge of the earth. And if you watch it, the more chaos came from 2016 within the streets with racism and misogyny and all this other stuff with Donald Trump. And I'm not talking about the man. I'm talking about the energy that the man exposed. You will see exponentially that the weather patterns began to get more fierce as well. And that will not change until we join consciousness in a very meaningful, powerful, unequivocal way with the universe and bring that balance to everything on this earth. We are here to be creators. And if you don't have the substance to create with, you're not a creator. Creating, not trees, but recreating weather patterns. That's what creation started with. Recreating recreating the consciousness that men had with the universe. And when that consciousness was one, you never saw weather patterns like these. I'm done, unless there are questions, comments. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to help me with verse 16 because you brought up consciousness, okay? The heavens were open. I want to talk about that because that's the changing of consciousness from earth consciousness or an opportunity. But I still want to see if anybody has any questions because I want us to see ourselves here and what this is symbolizing and trying to show us here. Do we have any questions, y'all? Questions or comments? Is this clear? Tell me that much.
Yeah, Ron, I have a question. This is Jackie, or for you or Pastor. When we were talking about the flooding, does that include what you said when you gave the explanation about the flooding? Does that go along with the drying up of the lakes, the rivers and stuff that's drying also? Or is that the drying up is causing the floods? I don't know.
Jackie, all of that is related. I think Pastor can give you a much better answer, but I think all of that is related and something that we should pay attention to, yes. The Pastor, can you help her?
Yeah, you just did. You're absolutely right. It is related. And think about this. We talked about everything being exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the drying up of the lakes and how many bodies are being found.
Ooh.
You cannot hide your murderous nature any longer. That's what I see in that. That is the way the universe is saying, your day has come. You've been weighed in the balance and you were found wanting. That's what the universe is saying by exposing everything. This is the evidence that's being presented before the court of the universe that finds you guilty on every count. And with you being found guilty on every count, those who are on this journey, guided by the universe, forgives you. But the question is, are you willing to change your ways? Because if you're not, then you will be judged by the same judgment that you mete out, and you will fall the same way that you have made others fall. You will reap what you have sown. if you don't embrace the forgiveness. The lakes, why is it that lakes are drying up and dry land is flooding? This is no coincidence. No coincidence. It would seem as though with the flooding and as much rain as we are receiving, the lakes will be overflowing. But the lakes are drying up. And every lake that I've read about that's drying up, they have found bodies in them. That speaks volumes about reading the signs of the times. I hope that helps you, Jack.
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Mary. Before we go further, because this is really good, but can you help me with Naaman? Because he had leprosy, but yet he was over an army. And from what I read, if you had leprosy, you had to say unclean, unclean, and stay away from people. But yet he led an army. I never could figure that out, and nobody's been able to give me a good I said a good explanation, but something that registered with me, because I don't get it. I get about the prideness. I get all of that, but my thing is he had leprosy.
Yeah, Mary, I saw that too, and since the scriptures got it, or how he got it, it just talked about him leading the king's army and winning a battle. So did it happen in the battle? What was it? How was it related to that battle? I don't know. So when I read that, as I said, it was so much in there I don't understand yet. I need to take another look at it, I guess. But I took that to look at the leprosy from a spiritual perspective. A while back, when we looked at leprosy, what we saw there, and I remember Barbara and or Audrey talking about it from a medical perspective, what leprosy does to the nervous system and the spinal cord and whatnot, and how it leaves you numb, and you have these outward or sores or abrasions on your skin, but it also has an internal effect on you. So that numbness, if you look at it in a spiritual perspective, they were unable to feel the vibrations. Like you hear people here say sometimes that resonates with me. I feel that, I hear that, or you hear, I'm so and so is in rhythm that it with this, or even with music. So in the spiritual sense, what that was saying is that they could not feel the vibrations of the universe. He could not feel be in rhythm with the earth or with God. So when you look at it from that perspective, he represents that person who has a position or has authority in the earth, and that authority defines who he is, and he uses that to make a name for himself or define his character. And he gets something overtakes him that his authority has no control over. So he has to lower himself. He has to give up his pride. He has to drop himself down into something that is nasty and dirty, and not even the prophet didn't even come out to see him, which was an insult. Is someone who is important, if he was. He sent a messenger out there to tell him, hey, go tell him to dip 7 times in the Jordan. So it's talking about him lowering himself, that this man of authority, this man of battle, this warrior who has lifted himself up to lower himself, and he does so reluctantly, but he does so, and he sees God, and he understands God, and it changes his whole character. So that's the message I got out of it. And I'm sure there's far more there that I don't see yet. But I did not see where the leprosy was kind of spelled out or defined in a way that I could see that it had any bearing on it. Did somebody else add something or see something that I missed?
Suppose that what you just said is the allegorical, metaphoric explanation of what that represents. And suppose it's saying that Naaman the leper had all the power that any man could desire. Not only did he have that power, but he had the ear and the heart of the king. And in order for him, his army, and the king to humble themselves to the point where they could be human, become human, he had to be forced to lose his connection with the king and his army, or experience the filth that he had forced everyone else to experience simply to make him wealthy. Suppose that's it. Suppose that's a message to us, not just in that age that the scriptures were written, but a message for this age as well, because the scriptures do not end with ages. The message is always relevant to the age that is understood in. Suppose that's it. Suppose.
I like that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
And suppose that the reason we are at this juncture, speaking of Naaman in this regard, and the reason that Mary raises a question that we have not talked about, because we felt like that, and when I say we, if Ron felt it, then all of us who are on the phone felt it. He felt it for us. That we were not ready to look at that because he didn't understand it. And Mary forced to understand it. Why?
Yeah.
Because right now, the Jordan River is flowing, and it's just as filthy as it ever has been. And it's time for the lepers who have brought upon humanity death and filth, and all because of greed, and all because of racism and all the other things. They have a choice. You can die, or you can repent by simply dipping in the filth that you created, experiencing it for yourself, and then you'll see God. And when you see God, you'll see who you were created to be. I'm done.
I really like it. Thank you. Mary, how did that sound to you? Did that help?
Yeah, that helped, because what I was thinking, they said leprosy for him, but then do we all have some kind of leprosy that we need to be washed in the Jordan River, so to speak, to cleanse ourselves so that we can actually know who we are, because there are things hidden in us that we're not even aware of. And by dipping in that water, it's going to bring it to light. So, that's I like that. I'm satisfied. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
I love that, and I love the question. I'm going to read, and I'm sorry, did somebody else have something?
Yeah, Ron, this is Barbara. And
Hey.
follow up to what Mary was talking about. If we look at leprosy metaphorically, yeah, we all at some point in time have varying degrees of leprosy. Someone with leprosy, it goes through a process, and then one of the final processes is when you had to go before the priest, and the priest had to look at you and declare, yeah, you got leprosy. You can't socialize with anybody. You have to let them know you're coming. Blah blah blah. But as has been said, leprosy is about decay of the body, corruption of the body over time. And if metaphorically we look at that, anything that we do that separates us from the Elohim that we are is putting us at risk for that spiritual decay, that spiritual corruption. The further we are in terms of our awareness, the further we are from knowing who we really are, the more we have to deal with these spiritual kinds of things related to pride, greed, selfishness, whatever. So in a sense, metaphorically, leprosy can be a corruption of the body of mankind separate from the Most High, if that resonates.
And Barbara Jean.
Yes, sir.
I would take it a step further. I think every one of us have been lepers not because of the disease itself, but because we have been corrupted and stayed that way until we started asking questions. And that started our movement on this journey, because more metaphorically, leprosy are the thoughts, isn't it? The thoughts and actions that move you away from your Creator, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I know I have been a leper because of what I bought into. Most of the people on this phone had a great degree of leprosy because of the depth of our embracing religious concept that we found out later were not biblically based. Does that make sense, Barbara Jean?
It makes all the sense in the world, and you said beautifully the point that I could not say as well, but we got there. So the answer to Mary's question, yes, all of us have had leprosy at some time, and some of us might still have some if we have not done everything that we need to embrace who we are.
You're right, and that's the key. Everything we can to embrace who we are. That's it.
And
That is
Ron,
it. Yes, sir.
everything you can doesn't mean that I've done everything you've done.
Right.
It means I have sincerely done everything I know to do. I have sincerely embraced everything that I know to embrace. I have sincerely searched for the route I must take, the understanding I must have in order for me to be who I was created to be. But that doesn't mean that everyone has done the same thing. It does mean that you have to do the best you can do, because nobody can beat you doing your best.
Now let's sum this up right here. I'm gonna read something to you from Luke. We've already talked about. No one after lighting a lamp put it away in a cellar, nor under a peg measure, but on a lampstand, in order that those who enter may see the light. This question that Mary brought up was a perfect example of that. You see the enlightenment that came out of that? You see how far that went? And as I said at the onset, I had no intentions of going into detail about naming, because a lot of stuff there I did not see. But that question put it on a lampstand, and it brought understanding. Now, what else did it do? it shows you when we start talking about we're all lepers, every one of us have had to dip in that nasty Jordan, because Pastor mentioned all the things that made it nasty, all the humanity, all the stuff that made it nasty. The part of that he dealt with is not the same part I dealt with, but the Jordan represents that filth. So we look at this and pull it all together. It speaks of not only the journey, but it speaks of opportunity that the enlightenment that Mary opened up is always there. It's always there. I read something the other day, and I mentioned it to Pastor. I learned a new word, y'all. And every time I learn a new word, I think about Monique. Monique knows some words. She's has a very good vocabulary. But I learned a word, and I felt good about it until he told me he already knew the word. Let's see where it is here. Palindrome. I did not know the word palindrome. But it means it talks about something that reads the same forward and backwards. And in this sense, in a spiritual sense, it is saying that he who holds the candle, he who holds the light, he who holds the wisdom, feeds it from the front or the back. You are constantly receiving as you are giving. So if you remember, mikvah comes in two different categories. The practical says, I am religious, and this is a ritual that I am doing to prove that I am a Baptist or that I want to join the church. The spiritual part of it says, as Bob and Pastor just said, I want to do everything I can to right myself, to be righteous, to be holy, to be enlightenment, to be forgiveness. So you set that as your intent. That's the difference. It is not a ritual. You set your intent to be more than what you are. So, and as Pastor talked about this, the mikvah part, see, you don't stay there. As what is revealed to you is revealed, and your consciousness changes, because that's what the earth consciousness is about. We talked about that when we talked about Noah. He had an opportunity to cultivate the ground, to change the consciousness of the earth. So when you look at this, verse 16 in Matthew 3, it says, and being baptized, Jesus went up immediately, and the waters, and behold, the heavens were open. The heavens open, it stands out to me, because that is saying there is nothing off limits to you. You have the opportunity to change your consciousness, change your awareness. You have opportunity to be one with the Creator and to fully immerse yourself into that, to see what that means. But Pastor, help me straighten out the rest of that. And the Spirit of God descending as a dove and coming upon him. This energy that he's immersed with here.
Again, we must see the dove as what Ron said, energy. And that energy is purpose to be an influence on your consciousness or your state of awareness. Last night I was talking with Clark, and Clark is my granddaughter, and I said to her something I had said to one of my friends. I said to her, and I was discussing this telescope that sees the star clusters and the quasars, etc. And I said to her that those astronomers who are doing the research on this project say that they cannot see beyond the edge of the universe. And I said to her, I told this friend of mine, okay, if they can't see to the edge, any further than the edge of the universe, then my question is, what is it that comes after the edge of the universe? What exists there? And he said to me, and I'm going to say it differently than him, of course. He said to me, listen, don't come to me with that. That's the kind of stuff that you end up in a crazy house trying to figure out. Just keep that to yourself. And that Clark said, I have my own theory. And, of course, I want to hear it. And she said that when you look at the stars above, they look like the the neurons that carry thoughts back and forth to the brain, the energy flows through them. She said that she believes that these are representative of the neurons that is in our consciousness, that expands our consciousness. And the reason that they cannot see beyond the edge of the universe is because their consciousness is totally material. In other words, earth consciousness. However, in order to see beyond the universe, your consciousness has to be one with the universe. And what happens is, as your consciousness expands, so does the universe expand, because you are the universe and the universe is you. So when Jesus had, when it says that Jesus, there's dove lit on Jesus because the heavens are open, it's speaking to the expansion of his consciousness that went far beyond the consciousness of this earth. And he was able to see far beyond the principles of religion that had been introduced in the temples and the synagogues. He was able to see beyond the powers of the kingdoms, or the consciousness of the kings of the earth. He was able to see beyond the priests who were there to satisfy the invaders and themselves. So what I'm saying is this. I do concur with what she said in terms of the expansion of the consciousness. Your consciousness will never be expanded as was Jesus, simply by you being baptized in some water. The expansion of the consciousness comes with the depth of your desire. If your desire is not for the benefit, advancement, and unicity of humanity with its Creator, your consciousness will not expand. If your consciousness is grounded in, ain't he all right, or your consciousness is bound by the principles of a denomination or church, by the principles of any ism, then your consciousness remains where it is. The reason that it is so difficult to get people to see what the scriptures are saying is because we have allowed those without an expanded consciousness to define the scriptures. And in doing so, they have been defined in material earthly times, like going to shake hands with Jesus, going to this place called heaven, going to this place to meet your grandmama and all your ancestors there, going to see all that. That is earth consciousness. However, spiritual consciousness expands beyond that. Spiritual consciousness sees that the extension of this life leaves this body and becomes one with the universe itself. Thus, it is able to share that energy that it is experiencing with those who are still in these bodies. And we call that infusion of thought and energy from our ancestors. That the Dogon were able to look beyond this earth and see the star system of Sirius. Not only did they come from there in terms of their energy, they were able to return there and recognize the what was not only there physically, but also what it represented, and the energy from that they were able to use to do tremendous things. Questions, comments? I'm done. I hope they help, Ron.
Yes, sir, it did. Thank you very much. Questions or comments, y'all? I want to look at. I'm going to say one thing about verse 17, because we've already talked about it without talking about it. Barbara mentioned it, and Mary mentioned it. Voice talks about vibration. Voice is saying you feel. Mary said, "Thank you very much. I see that." And Barbara asked the question. She said, "Does that resonate with you? Do you feel that?" This is talking about the vibration. Do you hear the voice of God? Do you feel these words that are being said? Do you feel the truth in you as we unravel these things, as we talk about, as you take a breath? Can you feel this? Is this in rhythm with you? So pull all that together. We are, I think, our understanding and enlightenment that we get points us to the next place, and says you are not only becoming more aware and expanding your consciousness, your desire for mankind is pleasing to the Father. It is pleasing to the Creator, and because of that, you are being expanded. And I love this. I love when we come together and everybody puts in that piece that is missing, so that we can pull this thing together and it makes sense. How you feel about this? All right? Any thoughts or questions? Does it make sense to you?
Makes sense.
Ron,
Yes.
you're right. It makes sense. What we've learned tonight, it's been so powerful. I mean, it's like we gained so much tonight, and we only did it within like an hour or something. But what has gone out in the macro is so powerful, and and as you say, it does resonate with me. It's very powerful. That's all I want to say. It makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I was hesitant to ask about that because I said, okay, we're off Naaman, but I needed to know, I needed to understand. And I'm so thankful that with this Bible studies, that the answer didn't come, well, Sister Mary, some things you have to take on faith. That never satisfied me, but I knew to stop asking questions because they didn't know. So, but thank you so much, because it resonated, and I get it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mary. Thank you. We all were enlightened by it. We are one, guys. We are one, and I love that. The same desire, the same mindset, the same energy, the same rhythm, and the same desire. So that's yeah. I really enjoy our studies and the energy that helps me on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and when I have my days, so this helps me. This helps tremendously. So, any other questions or comments about this? Again, we invite questions and comments maybe Saturday if there's something else that you see in this that you want to discuss. But I'm not going to keep you. If we're done, we're done. If there are no more questions or comments or anything else to grab our attention, we'll call it a night. So again, thanks everyone. Thank you for those who had questions and comments, and thank you for those who provided this for you. Okay? And I hope you enjoyed it week.
Awesome lesson. Thank
Awesome
you.
lesson. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.